The village of the dead. In the small village of Omonze, nestled in the heart of Igbo land, there lived a legend about a village where the dead roamed free. The villagers called it Oranaun, the village of the dead. The story went that anyone who ventured into Oranaun would never return. The dead would capture them and add them to their numbers, forcing them to roam the earth for free and for eternity. No one believed the legend, that is the story. Of course, it was just a silly story told to frighten children into behaving well. But when a group of young men from Omonze decided to explore the abandoned village, they discovered that the legend was all too true. It was true, alright? The young men of Omonze, led by Obinna, set out early one morning to explore Oranaum. They had heard the stories, but they didn't believe them. They were convinced that the village was just an abandoned relic, a reminder of a time long past. As they approached the village, they noticed something strange. The air grew colder and the trees seemed to lean in, as if they were trying to listen to their conversation. The group exchanged nervous glances, but Obinna reassured them that they were just being paranoid. Listen, this is very, very interesting. When they entered the village, they were struck by its beauty. The houses were old and decrepit, but they seemed to have a strange, otherworldly charm. The group explored the village, marveling at the ancient architecture and the strange symbols etched into the walls. But as the sun began to set, the group realized that they were lost. They had wandered too far into the village, and now they couldn't find their way back. Panic began to set in as they frantically searched for a way out. That was when they saw the dead. Alright, at first, they thought it was just a streak of the light. But as they looked closer, they realized that the figures standing before them were indeed dead. Their eyes were empty, their skin was grey, and their movements were stiff and jerky. The group froze in terror as the dead began to move towards them. They tried to run, but their feet seemed rooted to the spot. The dead surrounded them, their empty eyes staring into their souls. Obinna tried to scream, but his voice was trapped in his throat. He tried to move, but his body was paralyzed with fear. The dead began to close in, their cold fingers reaching out to scratch the living. And then everything went black. When Obinna came to, he was lying in his own bed, his mother hovering over him with a look of concern. He tried to sit up, but a wave of pain washed over him, forcing him back onto the pillow. What happened? He asked his mother, his voice shaking with fear. You've been sick, she replied. You've been asleep for days. Obinna's mind was racing. He remembered the village, the dead, and the terror he had felt, but it was all just a dream, wasn't it? He tried to convince himself, but it was just a nightmare. But the memory of the dead lingered in his mind. He knew that he had experienced something real, something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The next day, Obinna received a visit from his friends. They were all shaking, their eyes haunted by the memory of what they had seen. Alright? We can't talk about it, one of them said. We can't tell anyone what happened. Alright? Obinna nodded in agreement. He knew that no one would believe him or believe them, that they would be ridiculed and ostracized. But he also knew that he would never forget the village of the dead, the place where the dead roamed free and the living were free. He would never forget the terror he had felt, the fear that had gripped his heart. He knew that he would never be the same again. This is the story, The Village of the Dead. Written by my humble self. Read by my humble self. Summarized by my humble self. Thank you, and God bless you for listening. Another episode is dropping. Another story is coming soon.